So, one of the main reasons that Hollywood makes the same kind of content over and over is because it sells. So why does Hollywood repeat themselves? I think the number one reason they do this is because of money. So, traditionally, one of the ways that Hollywood would make money, for example, major blockbusters, is they would sell the rights, for example, and have foreign entities, foreign banks. They did this often, for example, with the Germans. They've done it, I'm sure, with other nationalities as well. So they would sell the rights at like a markup, in which case they had already made the money, and then the box office would be surplus. So I mentioned this, and I may have mentioned this some years back, because a lot of times over the years, especially when Hollywood was using this technique with the Germans, where they'd essentially sell the rights at a marked up price. Let's say, like, for the movie, I'm just going to make up numbers. Let's say you have a movie called Fat Man Number One. Okay, Fat Man Number One is based on, it's like a spin-off of Captain Hula Hoop and Fat Man. So Fat Man Number One is already based on a property that made money. So a Hollywood exec would go to a German bank and say, listen, I got this movie. I think it's going to probably easily make, let's say, 300 million. You want to invest in it. Let me sell the rights to you for, I don't know, 200 million. Okay, so already he's got that money. Then it would hit the box office. Maybe it goes and does like $1 billion over, I don't know how many years, maybe a full year or something like that. And then everybody sort of like makes a killing. So I'm oversimplifying it. So I'm going to go through a little bit this article from 2005 that gives us kind of concrete information on, for example, the German tax shelter. So the article was written by a gentleman, Edward J. Epstein. It's from November 21st, 2005, from Slate. Even though its focus may be far removed from the geopolitics of Europe, Hollywood has reason to be concerned with the recent results of the German elections. And that's because at this date, the German tax shelter ended. The newly designated Minister of Finance, Peer Steinbrück, announced on November 12th that he was retroactively eliminating the part of the tax code that allows German investors in media funds to defer their taxes. That's why the Germans were willing to take a hit. This German tax shelter, as I have previously pointed out, provided Hollywood with an El Dorado of easy cash for the past quarter century and allowed studios to increase their earnings without any risk. Now it is dead, and it was dead in 2005. A quick aside, they found other comparable ways to do business, but let's just take this concrete example just with the Germans. So historically, the rationale for such government subsidies was that local filmmakers could not survive without them. Since the 1970s, the American studios, with their enormous marketing muscle and their liability to send stars to foreign openings, and largely succeeded in replacing local European films with their own. The American studios' share of the box office in Europe grew from 30% by 1950 to over 80% by 1990. Moreover, European films without American stars could not count on being released other than in art houses in American markets. Even successful European films such as the French comedy Trois Hommes et un Couffin, Three Men and a Baby, the French thriller La Femme Nikita, and the Franco-Dutch drama Spoorloos, The Vanishing, had to be remade with American stars in order to gain access to wide distribution in America. One of the chief things that they'll do is, if you see, they do remakes a lot. And why did they do remakes a lot? They'll do remakes a lot essentially because it's sort of like got a built-in audience. So for example, if you look at Disney and you say to yourself, well, why would they do Snow White? How many times has Snow White been done? So let's say off the top of my head, bare minimum, Snow White has been done 5 times as live action. I'm probably underemphasizing how long it's been, but let's look at that. Why has it done or been done 5 times? Or, for example, they had an animated version of Snow White. Why would they do it again? Now, their approach to even doing it again would be that it's been done, it's a proven track record. I think another very important reason why Hollywood will redo stuff over and over invariably is really nostalgia. So, for example, if we look at some of the really larger franchises, you'll have 2 or 3 generations at this point that have seen the same film. So, for example, we probably have 3 generations that have seen Mission Impossible. They've seen Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise. Generations of Star Wars fans now. So there are different kinds of like Hollywood properties that you can build on and build on and build on. Now, I don't always think that it's bad, but I think that nostalgia or even sort of like having continuity is another reason. So when you factor in the money aspect, then everything else really seems will come very easy in terms of understanding. So a lot of times, for example, I see sometimes people will say, okay, like we had the blockbuster, the Ghostbusters, right? That did well. Why would they redo it? So based on my first premise, because the first one made money, this is the chief reason to make a female version of the blockbusters. They didn't make a female version of the blockbuster, the Ghostbusters, just because they wanted to give these comics agency. Sometimes I believe people may say that this is the case, but from my perspective, really coming from a place of safety, they were like, well, this made money before, so if I do it again, it'll make money. And then invariably, if you just go back to where we started, you look at my thumbnail, Superman, how many times have they done Superman as a movie? Why do they keep doing it again and again? Don't they do it again and again because it's safe? So I wanted to add something more up to date, and I'm not going to read the whole article, but just in Variety from 2024, there was a new German law that passed that was quote-unquote hastily passed. So Germany's hastily passed new film funding law has room for improvement, but is good news for Hollywood, industry experts say. And this was written by Nick Vivarelli, and this is from Variety from last year. Let me just double check. Yeah, from December 31st, 2024. And essentially what has happened is they've gone back to providing incentives to foreign production in Germany, which gets us back to the original thing, and using Germany as an example, which is in favor or favors like foreign Hollywood doing part of their film in Germany or working with German companies, kind of comparable to the first original system I was talking about. So do I think that, for example, that as an aside, do I think that Hollywood would be willing or is willing to spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on the message or on maybe advancing ideas politically that they're for? Potentially, yeah, potentially, and we have seen some of that, but I think like invariably for example, for me, a lot of stuff that Hollywood does, and I mean like mainstream filmmaking, they're not really pushing the envelope, even as far as quote unquote, when they say that they're doing quote unquote like the message. Is Hollywood willing to, for example, waste a lot of money solely on message? I don't really believe all the time that they do that. And I'm not saying that because like I've changed my mind, but for example, let's look at Black Panther. So Black Panther has a lot of messages in it, but really Black Panther, the movie, is about a guy, in Boseman's own words, who's not a hero. T'Challa is not the hero, would not be really the hero for the quote unquote American black public or black American public. The hero for the quote unquote audience that they were really heavily promoting this to was Eric Killmonger, and all of his lines related to the quote unquote black experience. So, as an example, like the message there gets snuffed out as a flame, and then we go back to business as usual. And that's really what Black Panther is about, which is why many people till this day do not like Black Panther, because the first movie is just sort of like business as usual.